You are listening to Friendly Fire Heroes, written and narrated by Mark Felton. Sometimes in war, death and destruction are sown by your own allies. The military use the term blue on blue for incidents between allied forces, though they are more widely known as friendly fire incidents when reported in the media. Christopher Finney was an 18-year-old trooper in the famous Blues and Royals, one of the two regiments, the other being the Lifeguards, that formed the Household Cavalry. Famous for their mounted squadron that rides at the Queen's Birthday Parade in London and the state opening of Parliament, the Blues and Royals alternate with the Lifeguards in providing mounted guards outside Horse Guards in London. They are, along with the 5 Foot Guard regiments, the most visible symbol of the British Army, but they are also much more than just ceremonial soldiers. The Household Cavalry provides an armoured regiment that has seen action at the forefront of Britain's overseas deployments since World War II, including the Falklands War in 1982 and the war in Iraq. On the 28th of March 2003, D Squadron, the Household Cavalry, equipped with Scimitar light tanks, was in the vanguard of the British 16th Air Assault Brigade advance up the Shatt al-Arab waterway north of the Iraqi city of Basra. The squadron's task was to locate and attack the numerically vastly superior and better equipped Iraqi 6th Armoured Division. The reconnaissance troop consisted of 2 Scimitar light tanks and 2 FV-103 Spartan armoured recovery vehicles moving north of the main British force. The patrol area had been declared a no-engagement zone to Allied air forces, and the vehicles were marked with orange overhead panels, thermal reflectors, and Union Jack flags. Trooper Finney was from Marple, near Stockport, and he had joined the Army in 2000 straight from school. After he had attended the Army Foundation College in Harrogate, Finney had joined the Household Cavalry Regiment at Windsor in January 2002. In March 2003, the regiment was an integral element of the British assault on Basra and the reduction of regular Iraqi army units blocking the coalition advance on Baghdad. It was Finney's first operational deployment, very nearly his last. D Squadron was probing about 30 kilometres ahead of 16 Air Assault Brigade, the tan-coloured tanks moving through flat, almost featureless desert. Finney was driving the leading scimitar of his troop. For several hours, Finney and his comrades had engaged and knocked out several Iraqi armoured vehicles that had tried to stop the British force. The squadron mopped up pockets of resistance while continuing north, expecting to run into more serious opposition when it encountered the 6th Armoured Division. Finney's tank, along with the troop commander's scimitar, paused beside a levee. The officer scanned the route ahead with binoculars, assessing the ground and any likely opposition. Suddenly, without warning, the 2 light tanks found themselves under a furious assault. When it happened, recalled Finney, I heard a bang and I made up my own little story that we had been attacked by a rocket-propelled grenade. But it wasn't. Armour-piercing cannon shells ripped through the tanks as the scream of jet engines passed low overhead. Through the confusion and dust of the attack, some of the cavalrymen saw their attackers banking away into the clear blue sky, squat and ugly dark planes whose engine noise reverberated off the burning vehicles. They were American A-10 Thunderbolts, known commonly as Warthogs, and D Squadron had just been strafed by the most capable tank-killing plane in the Allied inventory, firing 30mm depleted uranium shells. The 2 A-10s were from the Idaho Air National Guard's 190th Fighter Squadron and had been engaging artillery and rocket launchers of the Iraqi 6th Armoured Brigade for the past 2 hours. The reasons for the attack were unimportant in the shocked aftermath of the assault as men lay bleeding and screaming inside the wrecked scimitars and rounds started to cook off inside the gun turrets with loud bangs. Trooper Finney, though shaken by the suddenness and violence of the aerial attack, nonetheless kept his head and managed to haul his wounded gunner off the burning vehicle and dragged him to a safer position close by, where he applied a field dressing to his wounds. I jumped out and saw Corporal Tudbole, who was my gunner, lying half out of his hatch, and I helped him get down and started to sort him out, said Finney. Whilst this was going on, Iraqi armour had joined in, and Corporal of Horse Mick Flynn, a Falklands War veteran, rallied the remaining British tanks and began fighting back. Looking around for someone to report to, Finney saw that his troop commander was wounded, and no one else was taking command of the situation. Finney knew that he had to inform his own headquarters of the attack, but that would mean going into his burning scimitar to use the radio. Disregarding his own safety, Finney broke cover and ran over to the light tank and radioed a lucid report to his HQ, despite the risks he faced from a spreading fire and exploding ammunition. After completing his report, Finney ran back over to his injured gunner and began to help him walk towards a Spartan armoured recovery vehicle that Staff Sergeant Andrew Sindel, the Royal Engineers, had brought forward to assist the stricken scimitars, moving into the line of fire. Looking skyward once again, Trooper Finney realised to his horror that the two warthogs were lining up to make another strafing run at the tanks. Finney and his gunner continued to hobble along as the American aircraft fired their cannons, shells ripping into the scimitars and tearing up the road surface in great fountains of dirt and debris. One survivor who was there described the terrifying sound of the warthog's cannon. "That gun, I don't ever want to hear that again. It's like a cross between a moan and a roar." Finney was wounded in the lower back and both legs, while the gunner received a further wound to his head. Despite being in considerable pain, Finney managed to single-handedly drag Corporal Tudbole to the safety of the Spartan. Turning around, Finney could see that the driver of the other scimitar was still slumped in his seat inside the burning tank. Finney made his way back to the tank, his ammunition continued to explode all around him, and valiantly climbed up onto the scimitar in an effort to reach the driver, 25-year-old Lance Corporal of Horse Matty Hull. Unfortunately, the light tank was now well alight, and the heat, smoke and flames confounded Finney's efforts to get to Hull. Finney was beaten back until he collapsed beside the road, and Hull unfortunately perished in the inferno. A party of Royal Engineers recovered Finney from the scene and took him to the Spartan for treatment. During these attacks and their horrifying aftermath, Finney displayed clear-headed courage and devotion to his comrades, which was out of all proportion to his age and experience, read his citation. Acting with complete disregard for his own safety, even when wounded, his bravery was of the highest order throughout. The British were bitter at the behaviour of the American pilots responsible for the death of one of their comrades. Instead of providing air cover while helicopters were drafted in to evacuate the casualties, the planes flew away. The survivors of the attack went on to call the pilots cowboys. A later US Air Force investigation found fault with both pilots' actions, but the US Department of Defense cleared them both of any wrongdoing. In 2007, Andrew Walker, Oxfordshire Deputy Assistant Coroner, ruled that the attack on the Blues and Royals was a, quote, criminal, unlawful act tantamount to manslaughter, unquote. He went on to say, quote, "The pilot who opened fire did so with disregard for the rules of engagement and acting outside the protection of the law of armed conflict," unquote. The Pentagon in Washington, D.C. rejected the British coroner's findings. Christopher Finney became the youngest serviceman to be awarded the George Cross, which is equal to the Victoria Cross, at Buckingham Palace in February 2004. The George Cross is the preeminent civilian award for gallantry, which can also be given to soldiers who commit great acts of bravery not in the face of the enemy. Finney was subsequently promoted to Lance Corporal of Horse. Corporal of Horse Mick Flynn was awarded the Conspicuous Gallantry Cross, which is second only to the Victoria Cross, for his efforts in protecting the rescue effort from interference by Iraqi armoured forces. The award covered not only the blue-on-blue incident, but his incredible efforts over a sustained period of combat. His citation says he also fought over a period of 7 days with no consideration for his own safety and under fire from enemy tanks and artillery. Flynn was later awarded the Military Cross during operations in Afghanistan. Staff Sergeant Andrew Sindel, who brought his Spartan armoured recovery vehicle through the fire to help Finney and Corporal Tudball receive the Queen's Gallantry Medal. You have been listening to Friendly Fire Heroes, written and narrated by Mark Felton. Please check out my other YouTube channel, Mark Felton Productions, which is absolutely packed with videos on a wide variety of military history subjects. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon, which is very much appreciated. Please see details in the box below.